The great hall of the Valorian Empire was cold. It was always cold. The walls were made of black stone that came from the frozen moons of their home world. No warmth could survive here. No softness. No mercy. Princess Yuna stood in the center of the hall. Her hands were bound with energy chains that glowed bright blue against her silver skin. Around her, hundreds of Valorian nobles watched from their seats. Their faces showed nothing. Valorians were taught from birth that emotions were weakness. To feel was to fail. But Yuna had failed in a different way. She had led a rebellion against her own father. For 3 years, she had gathered soldiers who were tired of the emperor's cruelty. She had planned to overthrow him, to bring change to an empire built on blood and fear. But someone had betrayed her. Her army was destroyed. Her followers were executed. And now she stood alone before the man she had tried to kill. Emperor Kale sat on his throne above everyone else. He was tall and thin, with skin like polished metal. His eyes were completely black, like 2 holes into empty space. He looked down at his daughter with no love, no anger, just cold calculation. "Yuna of House Kale," he said. His voice echoed through the hall. "You have committed treason against the throne. You have raised arms against your emperor. You have brought shame upon your bloodline." Yuna lifted her chin. She would not beg. She would not cry. Even now, even in chains, she would not give him that satisfaction. "The punishment for treason is death," the emperor continued. "But death is too quick, too easy. You wanted to change our ways. You spoke of mercy and compassion. You admired the lesser species of the galaxy." He paused, and something like amusement crossed his face. "So I will give you what you wanted." Yuna felt the first crack in her armor of calm. What did he mean? The emperor stood. "You will not die, daughter. Instead, you will live. You will be stripped of your title, your lands, your name, and you will be sent to the most primitive planet in the known galaxy. You will be married to one of their creatures. You will live among them until you die of old age or shame." A murmur went through the crowd. This was unprecedented. This was worse than death. "You will be sent to Earth," the emperor said. "You will marry a human." Yuna's blood turned to ice. Humans. The Valorians considered them barely more than animals. They were weak, small, and emotional. They lived short lives and spent most of that time feeling things. They cried when they were sad. They laughed when they were happy. They loved and hated with equal passion. To Valorians, this was disgusting. Humans were seen as failed evolution, creatures who never learned to control themselves, and now Yuna would be forced to live among them, to marry one, to share her life with a creature her people considered little better than a pet. "Father," she said, and she hated how her voice shook, "I would rather die." "I know," the emperor replied. "That is why you will live." The trial was over. The guards came and took Yuna away. She was put on a small transport ship with nothing but the clothes on her back. No servants, no guards, no possessions. She was no longer a princess. She was no longer even Valorian in the eyes of the law. She was nothing. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. Yuna spent most of it alone in her small cabin, staring at the stars. She thought about her mother, who had been executed when Yuna was young. Her crime had been showing love to her children. The emperor had called it weakness. He had made Yuna watch as her mother died. That was the day Yuna had decided to rebel. It had taken her 20 years to build an army. 20 years of hiding her true feelings, pretending to be the cold and perfect princess. And it had all been for nothing. Now she was going to a planet full of creatures who felt everything. The thought made her sick. The ship landed at a human diplomatic station. It was a large building floating in space above Earth. Yuna was taken to a small apartment and told to wait. Her husband would arrive soon. She stood by the window and looked down at the blue and green planet below. It looked soft, fragile. She could see clouds moving across its surface. On Valoria, there were no clouds, only ice and stone and endless cold. The door opened behind her. Yuna turned, ready to face the beast she had been given to. She expected something crude, something rough, something that would look at her with hunger or hatred. Instead, she saw a man. He was shorter than a Valorian. His skin was a warm brown color, not silver like hers. His hair was black and slightly messy. He wore simple clothes, not armor or royal robes, and his eyes were dark and warm and tired. "Hello," he said. His voice was soft. "My name is Tejo. I am a doctor here at the station. I was told you would be arriving today." Yuna said nothing. She watched him like a predator watching prey. Tejo did not seem bothered by her silence. He walked to a small table and set down a tray he had been carrying. On it was a bowl of something hot and steaming and a thick blanket. "You must be tired from the journey," he said. "I brought some soup. It is good for warming up. And the blanket is for you. The station can be cold for newcomers." Yuna stared at the soup. She stared at the blanket. She did not understand. "What do you want?" she asked. Her voice was harsh. Tejo looked at her with those strange, warm eyes. "Nothing," he said. "I just thought you might be hungry and cold. This is a trick. It is soup." Yuna did not move. She had been told about humans. They were cruel beneath their softness. They pretended to be kind, but they always wanted something. They would hurt her, use her, break her. Tejo waited for a moment. When she did not take the soup, he simply nodded. "I will leave it here for you. The bedroom is through that door. I will sleep on the couch in the other room. If you need anything, just ask." He turned and walked toward the door. "Why are you doing this?" Yuna demanded. Tejo stopped. He looked back at her, and there was something in his face she could not read. Something sad and gentle and strange. "Because you are far from home," he said, "and no one should feel alone on their first night in a new place." Then he left. Yuna stood in the empty room for a long time. She looked at the soup. She looked at the blanket. She waited for the trap to spring. She waited for the cruelty to begin. It never came. That night, she did not eat the soup. She did not use the blanket. She sat by the window and watched the earth turn slowly below her. But she did not sleep, because she could not stop thinking about the strange human with the tired eyes and the warm voice. And for the first time in many years, Yuna felt something she did not understand. Something small and frightening. She felt confused. Yuna learned the shape of her prison. The apartment was small but clean. There was a kitchen, a living room, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. The walls were white and plain. There were no decorations except for a few photographs that Tejo kept on a shelf. She also learned the shape of her husband. Tejo woke up early every morning. He would make breakfast in the kitchen, always burning the toast. The smell of smoke became familiar to Yuna, like a strange alarm clock. He would eat quickly, leave food outside her bedroom door, and then go to work at the medical bay. He came home late, sometimes very late. He would eat a simple dinner, read a book, or watch the news on a small screen, and then fall asleep on the couch. He had given her the larger bedroom. He never asked for it back. They barely spoke. Yuna did not want to speak to him. She was a prisoner, and he was her jailer. It did not matter that he was kind. Kindness was just another weapon. She had learned this lesson long ago, but she watched him. She watched him through the crack in her bedroom door. She watched him when he thought he was alone. She studied him like a scientist studying a strange new creature. She was waiting for the mask to fall, waiting for the real human to appear. It never happened. Tejo was the same person every day. Quiet, gentle, tired. He never raised his voice. He never demanded anything from her. When she refused to eat with him, he simply nodded and ate alone. When she stayed in her room for days, he did not force her to come out. He just left food and water and clean clothes by her door. One night, Yuna could not sleep. She walked quietly to the kitchen to get water. But she stopped when she heard a sound from the living room. It was crying. She had never heard a Valorian cry. It was considered the greatest shame. But this sound was different. It was soft and broken, like something inside was tearing apart. Yuna moved closer. She hid in the shadows of the hallway and looked into the living room. Tejo was sitting on the couch. His face was in his hands. His shoulders were shaking. On the table in front of him was a small photograph. It showed a young woman with bright eyes and a big smile. She looked like Tejo. The same warm skin, the same kind face. Yuna did not understand. Why was he crying over a picture? She must have made a sound, because Tejo suddenly looked up. His eyes were red and wet. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Yuna expected him to be angry, to be embarrassed, to tell her to go away. Instead, Taeho wiped his face and gave her a small, sad smile. "I am sorry," he said. "Did I wake you?" "Who is she?" Yuna asked. The question came out before she could stop it. Taeho looked at the photograph. His hand reached out and touched the frame gently. "Her name was Nari. She was my younger sister." "Was?" The word hung in the air. "What happened to her?" Taeho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very soft. 3 years ago, there was a raid. A Valorian warship attacked the colony where she was working. She was a teacher. She taught small children how to read. He paused. She died trying to protect her students. Yuna felt something cold spread through her chest. A Valorian raid. Her people had killed this man's sister. And now he was forced to live with her, to take care of her, to call her his wife. "You should hate me," she said. Taeho looked at her. His eyes were still wet, but there was no anger in them, no hatred, just a deep, endless tiredness. "You did not kill her," he said. "My people did." "Yes, but you are not your people. You are just you." He set down the photograph. "And hating you will not bring her back. It will only make me ugly inside." Yuna did not know what to say. In her world, if someone killed your family, you killed them back. That was justice. That was balance. You did not forgive. You did not move on. You carried your hatred like a weapon until you could use it. But this human had every reason to hate her. His sister was dead because of her species. And instead of hurting her, he made her soup. He gave her blankets. He let her have the bigger bedroom. "I do not understand you," she said. Taeho smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "I do not understand myself sometimes," he said. "But I know that Nari would not want me to become cruel. She was the kindest person I knew. If I become a monster because of what happened to her, then the people who killed her win twice." He stood up slowly. "I'm going to make some tea. Would you like some?" Yuna should have said no. She should have gone back to her room. She should have kept her distance. But something had changed. Something small. Something she could not name. "Yes," she said. "I would like some tea." They sat in the kitchen together. Taeho made tea and burned the toast again. He told her about Nari. How she used to sing badly in the shower. How she could not cook anything except noodles. How she laughed at her own jokes even when no one else did. Yuna listened. She did not speak much. But she listened. And when Taeho talked about his sister, his face changed. The tiredness was still there, but there was also light, love, joy. Even though Nari was gone, she was still alive in his memories, in his heart. Valorians did not do this. When someone died, you forgot them. You moved on. Grief was weakness. Memory was pain. But watching Taeho, Yuna thought maybe the humans had it right. Maybe holding on to love was not weakness. Maybe it was strength. She did not say this out loud. She was not ready for that. But that night, for the first time, she slept in the living room while Taeho slept on the other couch. They did not touch. They barely spoke, but they were in the same room. And when Yuna woke up the next morning, she found a blanket over her shoulders that she had not put there. She looked at Taeho, who was already making breakfast. He did not say anything about the blanket. He just smiled and burned the toast again. Yuna felt something crack inside her chest. Something hard and cold that had been there for so long she had forgotten it existed. She did not know what was happening to her, but she knew that this strange, gentle human was the cause. And for the first time, she was not afraid of that. She was curious. Yuna noticed it one morning. A small tickle in her throat. She ignored it. Valorians did not get sick. Their bodies were engineered for survival. They could live on frozen moons with no atmosphere. They could survive in the vacuum of space for short periods. A simple cough was nothing. But the cough did not go away. By the second day, she was tired. By the third day, she could barely stand. Her silver skin had turned pale gray. Her eyes were dull. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. She did not tell Taeho. She stayed in her room and told herself she would be fine. She just needed rest. Her body would fight whatever this was. On the fourth day, she collapsed. She had been walking to the bathroom when her legs gave out. She fell hard against the floor. The world spun around her. She tried to get up, but her arms would not work. Her body was burning and freezing at the same time. She heard footsteps. Then Tejo was there, kneeling beside her. His face was worried. "Yuna," he said, "can you hear me?" She tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. Tejo put his hand on her forehead. His touch was warm, so warm. She had never felt anything like it. Valorians were cold-blooded. Their skin was always cool. But humans were different. They burned with inner fire. "You are very sick," Tejo said. "I need to get you to the medical bay." He lifted her. His arms went under her back and her legs, and he picked her up like she weighed nothing. She was taller than him, but he carried her without difficulty. She could feel his heart beating against her side. Fast and strong. The world blurred. She saw lights passing overhead. She heard voices, but could not understand the words. Then she was lying on something soft, and there were machines beeping around her. Tejo's face appeared above her. He was saying something to other people, giving orders. His voice was different now, strong and clear. This was not the quiet man who burned toast. This was a doctor fighting to save a life. Her life. Yuna closed her eyes. She dreamed of Valoria. She dreamed of the frozen moons and the black stone halls. She dreamed of her mother, singing soft songs in the dark. She dreamed of her father's cold eyes. Then she dreamed of warmth, a hand holding hers, a voice speaking gently. "Stay with me, Yuna. Please stay with me." She woke slowly. The first thing she felt was the hand still holding hers. The second thing she felt was how weak she was. Her body was empty, hollow, but alive. She opened her eyes. Tejo was sitting beside her bed. He looked terrible. His eyes were red. His clothes were wrinkled. His hair was a mess. He looked like he had not slept in days. "You are awake," he said. His voice cracked with relief. Yuna tried to speak. Her throat was dry. Tejo quickly gave her water through a small tube. It was cool and clean. "What happened?" she whispered. Tejo sat back in his chair. He did not let go of her hand. "Your body had a bad reaction to Earth's atmosphere. There are certain elements in our air that are toxic to Valorians over time. We did not know this. There has never been a Valorian living on an Earth station before." Yuna processed this. "I was dying." "Yes." "How long was I unconscious?" 3 days. 3 days. She looked at Tejo, at his tired face, at his wrinkled clothes, at the hand that was still holding hers. "You stayed here," she said, "the whole time." It was not a question, but Tejo nodded anyway. "I could not leave you." "Why?" Tejo was quiet for a moment. He looked down at their joined hands, his brown skin against her gray skin. So different, so strange. "When I became a doctor," he said slowly, "I made a promise. I promised to help anyone who was hurting. It did not matter who they were or where they came from. Pain is pain. Sickness is sickness. Everyone deserves care. But I am Valorian. My people killed your sister." Tejo looked up at her. His eyes were sad but steady. "Yes, and every day I have to choose what kind of person I want to be. I can let the past make me hard and cold, or I can honor my sister by being the kind of person she loved." He squeezed her hand gently. "Nari would have helped you, so I helped you." Yuna felt tears in her eyes. This shocked her. She had not cried since she was a child. Valorians did not cry. But here, in this small medical room, holding the hand of a human who had saved her life, she felt something break open inside her. "I do not understand you," she said again. But this time, it was not an accusation. It was wonder. Tejo smiled. It was a tired smile, but it reached his eyes. "You asked me once why I gave you soup and a blanket on your first night. Do you remember?" "Yes." "You were hurting. That was enough reason." He paused. "It is still enough reason." Yuna looked at their hands. His warmth was flowing into her cold skin. It felt like sunlight. It felt like something she had been missing her whole life without knowing it. "On Valoria," she said quietly, "no one has ever touched me with kindness." touch is only used for control, for power, for pain. She looked at him. But your touch is different. It is gentle. It does not demand anything. Taeho's expression softened. Touch should heal, not hurt. That is what I believe. He started to pull his hand away, probably thinking she wanted space. But Yuna held on. She did not let go. Stay, she said. Please. Taeho looked surprised. Then he nodded. He settled back into his chair. Their hands still connected. They sat like that for a long time. The machines beeped softly around them. The lights were dim. Outside the window, Earth turned slowly, blue and green and beautiful. Yuna did not know what was happening to her. She had been sent here as punishment. She was supposed to suffer. She was supposed to be broken by loneliness and disgrace. Instead, she had found something she never expected. She had found kindness. She had found warmth. She had found a human who saved her life because she was hurting, and that was enough reason. For the first time in her life, Yuna did not feel alone, and that was more terrifying and more wonderful than anything she had ever experienced. She closed her eyes, still holding Taeho's hand, and let herself rest. She was still weak. She was still far from home. She was still married to a stranger from a species her people hated, but somehow, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Taeho had created a special medicine for Yuna. It filtered the toxic elements from her blood and protected her lungs from the harmful parts of Earth's air. She had to take it every day, but it worked. Her strength returned. Her skin regained its silver color. She could walk again, then run, then move as freely as before. But something else had changed. She no longer stayed in her room. At first, she told herself it was practical. She needed to move around to rebuild her muscles. She needed to eat proper meals to regain her energy. She needed to be near Taeho in case something went wrong again. But slowly, she admitted the truth to herself. She wanted to be near him. She started waking up when he woke up. She would sit in the kitchen while he made breakfast. She learned to expect the smell of burned toast. It made her smile, though she hid it behind her cup of tea. She started going to the medical bay with him. She would sit in the corner and watch him work. She saw him treat patients of all species. Humans, yes, but also aliens from distant worlds. He treated them all the same, with patience, with care, with gentle hands that never hurt. One day, a young human child came in with a broken arm. The child was crying loudly, scared and in pain. Taeho knelt down to the child's level. He did not tell the child to stop crying. He did not say that crying was weak. Instead, he said, "It is okay to cry. Crying means you are feeling something important. Let it out." Then he fixed the arm, gave the child a small candy, and sent them home with a smile. Yuna watched this. She thought about her own childhood. When she had cried, her father had locked her in a dark room until she stopped. He had taught her that tears were poison, that feeling was failure. But this human taught children that feeling was important, that pain deserved to be expressed, that healing started with honesty. She started asking Taeho questions. Why do humans laugh? Why do humans cry? Why do humans hold hands and hug and kiss? Why do humans sing songs and tell stories and make art? Taeho answered every question patiently. We laugh because joy should be shared, he said. We cry because sadness should not be carried alone. We hold hands because touch reminds us that we are not alone. We make art because there are feelings too big for words. Yuna thought about this for a long time. On Valoria, none of this existed. There was no art, there was no music, there were no stories, except histories of war and conquest. Everything was efficient, cold, empty. She had thought this was strength. Now she was not sure. One evening, a refugee ship arrived at the station. It carried families fleeing from a war zone. They had nothing. No food, no clothes, no money. Just each other. Yuna watched as Taeho worked for hours treating their injuries. Then, when his shift was over, she watched him give his own dinner to a hungry child. The child's mother tried to refuse, but Taeho just smiled and said, "I had a big lunch. Please, take it." He had not had a big lunch. Yuna knew this because she had been with him. He had skipped lunch entirely because there were too many patients. You gave away your food, Yuna said later when they were walking home. That child was hungry. So are you. Taeho shrugged. I can eat tomorrow. That child needed it today. Yuna stopped walking. Taeho stopped too, looking at her with confusion. On Valoria, she said slowly, the strong take from the weak. That is the natural order. That is survival. And here, you give your food to a stranger's child. She shook her head. I do not understand how your species survived. Taeho smiled. It was the smile he always had when she said something that confused him. We survived because we help each other. One person alone is weak, but many people together, taking care of each other, sharing what they have, that is how we built cities, civilizations. That is how we reached the stars. They started walking again. Yuna was quiet, thinking. That night, she could not sleep. She went to the living room and found Taeho there, reading a book. Can I sit with you? She asked. Taeho moved over on the couch. She sat beside him, closer than she had ever sat before. Tell me about your mother, she said. Taeho looked surprised. But then he smiled and began to talk. His mother had been a teacher, like Nari. She had died when he was young, from sickness. His father had raised him and Nari alone. His father had been a fisherman who told terrible jokes and sang off-key. He sounds nice, Yuna said. He was. He died 5 years ago, peaceful, in his sleep. Taeho paused. I miss him. I miss all of them. Yuna was quiet. Then she said, My mother was killed when I was 7. My father ordered her execution because she showed love to her children. He said it made us weak. Taeho's face changed. Horror, sadness, anger, so many emotions, all at once. I am sorry, he said. That is terrible. It is normal on Valoria. It should not be normal anywhere. Yuna looked at him. This strange human who felt everything so deeply, who cried for his dead sister, who gave food to hungry children, who saved the life of a woman whose people had destroyed his family. She used to sing to me, Yuna said quietly, before bed. It is my only happy memory from childhood. What did she sing? I do not remember the words. Just the feeling. Warm, safe, loved. Yuna's voice broke slightly. I have not felt that way since. Taeho did not say anything. He just reached over and took her hand. His warmth flowed into her, steady and gentle. They sat like that for a long time. The station hummed quietly around them. Outside, the stars turned slowly. You feel it now, Taeho said finally. Do you not? Yuna thought about the warmth of his hand, the safety of sitting beside him, the strange peace she felt in his presence. Yes, she admitted. I feel it now. Taeho squeezed her hand. Then you have not lost it. You just needed to find it again. Yuna leaned her head against his shoulder. It was the closest she had ever been to him. She expected to feel uncomfortable, vulnerable, weak. Instead, she felt like she was finally coming home. She fell asleep on his shoulder that night. When she woke up, there was a blanket over her, and Taeho was still there, still holding her hand. He had stayed with her through the night, just like he always did. And for the first time in her life, Yuna understood what it meant to be loved. Not because she was useful, not because she was powerful, not because she was a princess, but simply because she was her. And that, she realized, was the most human thing of all. His spies had been watching his daughter. They had recorded everything. Her illness, her recovery, her growing closeness with the human doctor. They had watched her hold his hand, lean on his shoulder, smile at his terrible jokes. The Emperor watched the recordings with a face of stone. But inside, something dark and cold was growing. His daughter had been sent to Earth as punishment. She was supposed to suffer, to be broken, to spend her days in misery, regretting her rebellion. Instead, she was happy. This could not be allowed. The Emperor summoned his most loyal soldier. Commander Hyun was a legend among the Valorian military. He had conquered 12 worlds. He had crushed rebellions without mercy. He was tall, even for a Valorian, with scars across his silver face and eyes like black ice. You will go to Earth, the Emperor said. You will retrieve my daughter, and you will execute the human who has corrupted her. Hyun bowed. It will be done, my emperor. 1 week later, 3 Valorian warships appeared above the Earth station. Yuna saw them first. She was sitting by the window, drinking tea, when the massive ships blocked out the stars. Her cup fell from her hands. It shattered on the floor, but she did not notice. She knew those ships. She knew what they meant. Taeho, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Taeho. He came running from the kitchen. He saw the ships. His face went pale. What is happening? He asked. Before Yuna could answer, the station's communication system activated. A voice filled the air. Cold, commanding, familiar. This is Commander Hyun of the Valorian Empire. We are here for the prisoner known as Yuna. Any resistance will be met with total destruction. You have 1 hour to surrender her and her human husband. The word was spoken with disgust. If you do not comply, we will destroy your station and everyone on it. The message ended. Silence filled the apartment. Yuna turned to Taeho. Her heart was pounding. You have to give me to them. No, Taeho. They will kill everyone. The whole station. Thousands of people. You have to let me go. Taeho's face was calm. Too calm. No. This is not a choice. This is survival. Taeho took her hands. His touch was warm and steady, just like always. But his eyes were different. There was something in them she had never seen before. A fire, a strength that went beyond muscle or weapons. Listen to me, he said. On Valoria, you sacrifice individuals to save the group. That is your way. But we are human. We do things differently. What can you possibly do? You have no weapons, no warships. You are just doctors and engineers and ordinary people. Yes, Taeho said. We are ordinary people, and that is exactly why we are going to fight. He led her to the main hall of the station. What she saw there made her stop in shock. The entire population of the station had gathered. Hundreds of people. Doctors, nurses, engineers, cooks, teachers, families with children. They stood in a massive crowd, facing the main entrance where the Valorians would come. They had no weapons, no armor, no soldiers, but they were not running. A woman stepped forward. She was the station's administrator. Her hair was gray and her hands were wrinkled, but her voice was strong. We heard the message, she said to Yuna. We know what they want, and we decided together. We are not giving you up. Yuna shook her head. You do not understand. They will kill you. All of you. The Valorians do not make empty threats. A man holding a small child spoke up. We understand. But this is our home. And you are part of our home now. You do not even know me. We know Taeho. Another voice called. He has saved our lives. Healed our children. Stayed up all night when we were sick. If he says you are worth protecting, then you are worth protecting. Yuna looked at Taeho. Tears were streaming down her face. Why? Why would they die for me? Taeho smiled. It was sad and proud and full of love. Because that is what family does. We do not abandon each other. Not ever. The hour passed. The station's doors opened. Commander Hyun walked in with a squadron of Valorian soldiers. They wore black armor and carried weapons that could cut through steel. They expected to find a cowering population. They expected easy prey. Instead, they found Taeho standing at the front of the crowd, alone, unarmed, looking directly at Hyun. Move aside, human, Hyun said. This does not concern you. It does, Taeho replied. Yuna is my wife. You want her. You go through me. Hyun laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. You? One small human against the Valorian Empire? I have killed thousands of your kind. You are nothing. Then killing one more should be easy. Hyun raised his weapon. His finger moved toward the trigger. And then something happened that he did not expect. Every single human in the station stepped forward. They stood beside Taeho. Around him. Behind him. A wall of ordinary people. No weapons. No armor. Just bodies and determination. The administrator spoke. You will have to kill all of us. A child's voice called out. We are not scared of you. More voices joined. We stand together. Hyun looked at the crowd. He had conquered worlds. He had broken armies. But he had never seen anything like this. These creatures were weak. They knew they would die. And yet they did not run. They did not beg. They stood together, holding hands, protecting one of their own. Something cold moved in Hyun's chest. Something he did not recognize. "This is foolish," he said. "You will all die." "Maybe," Taeho said. "But we will die standing, together, and you will have to live with what you did." Hyun's weapon was still raised. His soldiers were waiting for the order. One word, and the massacre would begin. But Hyun hesitated. He thought about the battles he had won, the people he had killed, the worlds he had burned. He had done it all for the Empire, for strength, for survival. But these humans were not fighting for survival. They were fighting for each other, for love, for something bigger than themselves. And suddenly, Hyun was not sure who was truly strong. Yuna stepped forward. She stood beside Taeho, taking his hand. "I will go with you," she said to Hyun. "Just leave them alone." Taeho gripped her hand tighter. "No. Taeho, please. No." He looked at her with those warm, tired, stubborn eyes. "We stay together. That is what family does." Yuna looked at him, at the crowd behind them, at the children holding their parents' hands, at the old woman who had welcomed her to their home. These people were not Valorian. They were not cold or strong or ruthless, but they were brave, and she loved them for it. She turned to Hyun. "My father calls love a weakness," she said. Her voice was clear and strong. "But I have seen what love can do. I have seen a man grieve and still show mercy. I have seen humans break and rebuild. I have seen kindness used as a weapon sharper than any blade." She lifted her chin. "If this is weakness, then Valoria has never known true strength." Hyun stared at her. His weapon was still raised. But slowly, very slowly, something changed in his black eyes. And Yuna saw something she never thought she would see in a Valorian commander: doubt. Hyun and his soldiers stood on one side. Hundreds of unarmed humans stood on the other. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The tension in the air was thick enough to taste. But something else was happening. Something nobody expected. Earth's government had received word of the situation. Emergency broadcasts went out across the planet. News spread through the solar system. And then, somehow, it spread further. The standoff was being broadcast to the entire galaxy. Billions of beings watched. Humans on Earth, yes, but also species from 100 different worlds. Some had been conquered by the Valorians. Others lived in fear of them. All of them watched the screens showing a small space station, a group of unarmed humans, and a princess who had chosen love over empire. Messages started coming in. First from Earth's colonies. "We stand with the station." Then from trade partners. "We are watching." Then from species who had been silent for centuries. "We remember what the Valorians did to us." Ships began appearing at the edge of Earth's solar system. Not warships, not weapons, just ships, watching, witnessing. Hyun received reports from his fleet. "Commander, there are ships arriving. Hundreds of them. They are not attacking. They are just waiting." Hyun looked at the growing crowd on his tactical display. Ships from a dozen different species. None of them strong enough to challenge Valoria alone. But together, they were a statement, a message. The galaxy was watching, and the galaxy was tired. In the station, Yuna watched the same reports on a screen. She could not believe what she was seeing. Species that had been enemies for generations were now gathered together, not to fight, just to watch what would happen next. "What is happening?" she whispered. Taeho stood beside her, still holding her hand. "They see something worth watching," he said. "They see people standing up when they should be running away. But why does that matter to them? Because everyone understands courage. Everyone understands love, even species who have been taught to hide those things." Taeho looked at her. "You are giving them hope, Yuna. Hope that things can be different." Yuna looked back at the screen, at the ships gathering, at the messages pouring in from across the stars. She thought about her people. The Valorians had built their empire on fear. They had conquered through strength and ruled through cruelty. They believed emotions were weakness. They believed compassion was failure. But look at what was happening now. A handful of humans, armed with nothing but love, had stopped the greatest empire in the galaxy. Not with weapons, not with armies. Just by standing together and refusing to be afraid. And the galaxy had noticed. Yuna made a decision. She walked toward Hyun. Taeho tried to stop her, but she gently pulled her hand free. "Trust me," she said. She stopped a few steps from the commander. His weapon was still raised. His soldiers were still ready to fire. "Commander," she said, "I want to send a message to the entire galaxy. Will you allow this?" Hyun frowned. "Why would I allow that?" "Because you are already losing. Look at those ships. Look at the messages coming in. The galaxy is watching, and they are not looking at us with fear anymore. They are looking at us with something worse." "What?" "Pity." Hyun's face darkened. "We do not need their pity. No, you need their fear. That is how the Empire works. Fear keeps species in line. Fear prevents rebellion." Yuna shook her head. "But you cannot be feared and pitied at the same time. If you kill these humans, you will not be conquerors. You will be murderers. Bullies. Monsters who kill unarmed families because a small human said no." She stepped closer. "And every species out there will remember. They will tell stories about this day, about how the mighty Valorians were so afraid of love that they had to destroy it." Hyun was silent. His black eyes were unreadable. "Let me send the message," Yuna said. "Let the galaxy see what is really happening here. And then you can make your choice." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Hyun lowered his weapon slightly. "You have 5 minutes." Yuna nodded. She turned to the station's communication officer. "Can you broadcast to all those ships?" "Yes, we can reach anyone who is listening." "Then do it. Now." The broadcast began. Yuna's face appeared on screens across the galaxy. Billions of beings saw a silver-skinned woman with tears on her face, standing in front of humans who had refused to let her go. "My name is Yuna," she said. "I was born a princess of the Valorian Empire. I was raised to believe that emotions are weakness, that compassion is failure, that the only strength is the strength to hurt others." She paused. Her voice was shaking, but she continued. "I was sent to Earth as punishment. I was meant to suffer among creatures my people call primitive and weak. I was meant to be broken." She looked at Taeho, at the crowd of humans behind him, at the children holding their parents' hands. "But I was not broken, I was healed." The words came faster now, stronger. "I have seen a human grieve for his murdered sister and still show mercy to her killers. I have seen him give his food to hungry children and stay awake for days to save a stranger's life. I have seen ordinary people face warships without weapons because they refused to abandon someone they loved." Her voice rang out across the stars. "My father calls this weakness. But I have learned the truth. Humans are not weak because they feel. They are strong because they feel. Their emotions do not destroy them. Their emotions forge them. Every tear makes them more compassionate. Every loss makes them more determined. Every moment of love makes them more willing to fight for each other." She turned to face the camera directly, to face the galaxy. "I know you are watching. I know many of you have suffered under the Empire. I know you have been taught to hide your feelings, to crush your compassion, to become cold like the Valorians." She lifted her chin. "But look at what is happening here. Look at these humans. They know they might die. They know they cannot win. And they are still standing. They are still holding hands. They are still fighting for love." Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady. "If this is weakness, then I choose to be weak. If compassion is failure, then I choose to fail. And if standing together for love means dying, then I will die knowing that I finally understand what it means to truly live." She lowered her head. "The choice is yours now. All of you. The Valorian soldiers, the watching ships, the beings hiding on distant worlds. You can continue to be cold and strong and alone, or you can choose something different." She looked at Taeho one last time. His eyes were full of tears and pride and love. "You can choose to feel." The broadcast ended. Silence filled the station. And across the galaxy, billions of beings held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. His daughter had betrayed him again. Not with weapons this time. Not with armies, but with something far more dangerous. She had shown the galaxy that there was another way to live. She had given them hope. And hope was a disease that spread. The Emperor activated his personal channel to Hein. "Commander, kill them all. Now." Hyun stood in the station, surrounded by his soldiers. He heard the Emperor's command. He looked at the humans standing before him, at the children, at the old woman who had welcomed Yuna into their home, at the young doctor who had not stepped back once. "Commander," the Emperor's voice came again. "I gave you an order." Hyun raised his weapon. The humans did not move, did not run, did not beg. They just held each other's hands. Something moved in Hyun's chest. That same strange feeling from before. Doubt. But also something else. Something he had buried so deep he had forgotten it existed. Memory. He remembered his mother. Before she was taken away for showing emotion, he remembered her singing to him at night. He remembered her warm hands on his face. He remembered love. Slowly, Hyun lowered his weapon. "Commander!" The Emperor's voice was sharp with rage. "What are you doing?" Hyun looked at the camera that was still broadcasting. He knew the galaxy was watching. He knew his own soldiers were watching. He knew that what he said next would change everything. "I am remembering something," he said quietly. "Something the Empire took from me a long time ago." He turned to his soldiers. "Lower your weapons." Nobody moved. "I said lower your weapons." One soldier obeyed. Then another. Then another. One by one, the Valorian weapons dropped. The Emperor's voice was screaming now. "This is treason. You will all be executed." Hyun turned off the channel. He looked at Yuna. At this princess who had been sent here to be broken but had found something stronger instead. "Go," he said. "Live your life. And maybe one day, show us how you learn to feel again." Yuna was crying. She walked forward and, to the shock of everyone watching, she hugged Hyun. The Valorian commander stood frozen. He had not been hugged since he was a child.
"Thank you," Yuna whispered.
Hyun said nothing, but his eyes were wet. The Valorian soldiers withdrew to their ships. They left Earth's space quietly, without violence. Across the galaxy, beings watched in disbelief. The mighty empire had backed down, not because they were defeated, because they had chosen to. In the days that followed, everything changed. The broadcast of Yuna's speech spread to every corner of the galaxy. Beings who had lived in fear for generations began to speak openly. They shared stories of loss, of love, of memories they had been forced to hide. On Valoria, something unprecedented happened. People began to talk. Soldiers refused orders. Officials questioned the Emperor. Small acts of rebellion that grew larger every day. Within a month, Emperor Kael's power was crumbling. Within 3 months, he was overthrown. Not by war, not by violence, but by his own people, who finally remembered what it meant to feel. Hyun became the leader of the new Valorian government. He reached out to Earth, to the species the Empire had conquered. He did not ask for forgiveness. He simply said, "We want to learn a different way." And the humans, being humans, said yes. 6 months after the standoff, Yuna stood on a balcony overlooking Earth. It was morning. The sun was rising over the blue ocean. The light was golden and warm, painting the clouds in shades of pink and orange. Valoria had no sunrises, only eternal gray skies over frozen ground. But Earth was different. Earth was alive. She heard footsteps behind her. She did not need to turn to know who it was. Taeho joined her at the railing. He carried 2 cups of tea. The toast, as always, was slightly burned. "Beautiful, is it not?" he said. "Yes." Yuna took the tea. "I never knew light could be so warm." They stood together in comfortable silence. Below them, the station was waking up. People were walking to work. Children were playing. Life was continuing, as it always did. "Do you regret it?" Taeho asked. "Being sent here?" Yuna thought about the question. She thought about her old life on Valoria. The cold halls. The empty rituals. The constant pressure to hide every feeling. She thought about the first night here. The soup she had refused. The blanket she had not used. The fear of kindness that had seemed so real. And she thought about everything after. The illness. The recovery. The long nights talking. The first time she held Taeho's hand. The first time she leaned on his shoulder. The first time she understood what it meant to be loved. It was meant to break me, she said softly. That was my father's plan. He thought I would suffer. He thought loneliness and disgrace would destroy me. She turned to look at Taeho, at his warm brown eyes, at his kind smile, at the face that had become more familiar to her than her own. But instead it taught me how to feel. Taeho set down his tea. He reached out and took her hand. His warmth flowed into her, as it always did. You already knew how to feel, he said. You just needed someone to remind you it was okay.
Yuna moved closer to him. She leaned her head against his shoulder, as she had done so many times before.
I do not understand how someone who lost so much can still be so kind, she said. Your sister, your parents, all the pain the Valorians caused. How do you not hate us? Taeho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Hate is heavy, he said. It takes so much energy to carry. And what does it give you? Nothing. Just more pain. He squeezed her hand. I decided a long time ago that I would rather use that energy for something else. For healing. For helping. For love. He looked at her. And then you came along, and I found something worth using all that love for. Yuna felt tears on her face. Happy tears. Human tears. I love you, she said. The words came out easily, naturally. Words that would have been impossible a year ago. Taeho smiled. That warm, tired, wonderful smile. I love you too. He kissed her forehead. Simple. Gentle. Perfect. They stayed on the balcony as the sun rose higher. The sky turned from pink to gold to brilliant blue. Below them, life continued. People laughed and worked and loved, as they always had. Yuna thought about the future. There would be challenges. The galaxy was changing, and change was never easy. There would be conflict and setbacks and days when everything seemed impossible. But there would also be this moment, this warmth, this man standing beside her, holding her hand. She had been sent here to be broken. Instead, she had been reborn. And as she watched the sun rise over Earth, she knew that this was only the beginning, not just for her, but for the entire galaxy. Because the humans had taught them something important, something the Valorians had forgotten long ago. The gentlest hands can change the universe. And love, the thing they called weakness, was the strongest force of all. Yuna smiled at the sunrise. She was home.